recommendations are specific imaging technique, lymph node assessment, and surgical assessment are not mandatory in cervical cancer staging. And in low resource countries, clinician can assess the cancer clinically to stage the disease. Imaging methods used are ultrasonography, CT scan, MRI, PET scan, and pathological technique used FNAC, lymph node biopsy, or histopathological report evaluation. Anything which is used should be recorded. After operation, histopathological report will provide information about size and extension of the lesion. And after receiving all reports, final stage is to be assigned. To assess the extent of vaginal involvement, colposcopy may be used, but it is not mandatory in all cases. And regarding examination under anesthesia, it is not integral part for staging. It can be used when there is less facilities for imaging. Surgical-pathological assessment of lymph node can be performed by laparotomy or by laparoscopy. Pathological confirmation is the gold standard, but imaging can be used when there is no facility for pathological confirmation. And choice of imaging modality for lymph node evaluation is not fixed by FIGO. Regarding cystoscopy and proctoscopy, these are recommended only when there is suspicion for bladder or rectal mucosa involvement. Cystoscopy is considered in barrel shape, endocervix, or endocervical growth, or growth in the anterovaginal wall. Histological confirmation is mandatory to assign stage 4. Are there controversial issues in FIGO 2018 staging? Yes. LVSI does not change the stage, but we know that LVSI has influence on treatment plan. Extension to uterine corpus does not change the stage. Horizontal spread is omitted. And regarding lymph node metastasis, enlarged lymph node, either by metastasis or by infection, is not differentiated by traditional radiology criteria. Let us have few seconds break with virtual tea to provide glucose to our brain before going to the next session regarding treatment of cervical cancer. Treatment of cervical cancer. 85% incidence and 90% mortality from cervical cancer are in low resource countries. Surgery is the mainstay of treatment only in early stages. Radiotherapy may be used as definitive treatment in all stages of cervical cancer. Concurrent chemoradiation is the standard of care in locally advanced cervical cancer. Metastatic diseases are treated by systemic therapy using chemotherapy, targeted therapy, or immunotherapy. I am showing the treatment of cervical cancer using NCCN guideline, which is evidence-based and used in different countries. Firstly, showing the non-fertility sparing surgery for stage 1A1 with no LVSI. First cone is done, and if margin negative, then and patient inoperable, or there is the contraindication for operation, patient can be observed. If negative margin and patient is operable, definitive treatment is extrafascial hysterectomy. For positive margin, we can consider repeat cone or do extrafascial hysterectomy or modified radical hysterectomy with pelvic lymphadenectomy if margin are positive for carcinoma. This is the treatment for stage 1A1 with LVSI and stage 1A2. Primary treatment is modified radical hysterectomy plus pelvic lymphadenectomy. And radiotherapy in the form of EBRT and brachytherapy can be given when surgery is contraindicated or patient refuses surgery. Treatment for stage 1B1, 1B2, and 2A1. Category 1 treatment is radical hysterectomy plus pelvic lymphadenectomy based on high level of evidence. Alternatively, pelvic EBRT plus brachytherapy with or without chemotherapy should be given in patients who have high risk and may require adjuvant therapy following radical hysterectomy. treatment of stage 1B3 and 2A2. Category 1 treatment here is concurrent chemoradiation, including EBRT, concurrent platinum therapy, and brachytherapy. Another option is radical hysterectomy plus pelvic lymphadenectomy. Most of cases here, adjuvant therapy is needed, but our recent goal is to ensure monotherapy and avoid dual therapy. Third option is pelvic EBRT plus concurrent chemotherapy plus brachytherapy and selective completion hysterectomy. It is category 3 treatment. The option of neoadjuvant chemotherapy is now omitted from NCCN guideline for treatment of stage 1B3 and 2A2 cancer. Some points regarding the 1B3 and 2A2 cancer. Radiologic imaging should be done to exclude lymphadenopathy and metastatic disease as these are bulky tumor. If pelvic lymph node is positive but para-aortic lymph node is negative, surgical staging of para-aortic lymph node should be done. In case of positive para-aortic lymph node, extended field radiotherapy plus concurrent chemotherapy and brachytherapy should be given. If distant metastasis is present with biopsy confirmation, systemic therapy is advised. Treatment of stage 2B to 4A. Concurrent chemoradiation is standard treatment here, and here there is no other competitor. Treatment of stage 4B or metastatic disease. If local treatment is possible, local resection, local ablation, followed by adjuvant systemic therapy is treatment. But if local treatment is not possible as it is metastatic disease, systemic therapy is treatment of choice there. What are the systemic therapy? First-line combination therapy includes cisplatin, paclitaxel, and bevacizumab, which is the preferred regimen. And single-agent first-line therapy is cisplatin, which is preferred. Alternative to cisplatin are carboplatin or paclitaxel. Second-line therapy preferred regimen is pembrolizumab, which is an immune checkpoint inhibitor and can be given in selected cases. Other recommended regimens are bevacizumab, topotepan, and gemcitabine, etc. Now, fertility sparing treatment. These are done in early stages of cervical cancer. Patients should be counseled properly and should be sent to fertility specialist. In stage 1A1 with no lymphovascular space invasion, when there is minimum risk of lymph node involvement, cone biopsy with negative margin is sufficient treatment. But if margin is positive, repeat cone or a simple trachelectomy can be performed. In stage 1A1 with LBSI and stage 1A2, radical trachelectomy plus pelvic lymphadenectomy is the treatment. Alternatively, cone biopsy with negative margin plus pelvic lymphadenectomy should be done. Fertility sparing treatment of stage 1B1 and selected cases of stage 1B2 are radical trachelectomy plus pelvic lymphadenectomy. We should remember that fertility sparing treatment for cervical cancer should be done if the lesion size is equal to 2 cm or less than 2 cm. Some points about imaging. Pelvic MRI is the preferred imaging modality to assess local disease extent. For metastatic workup, chest, abdomen, and pelvic CT scan can be performed, or PET CT scan can be performed. But PET CT scan is preferred if there is facilities available. Regarding fertility sparing, pelvic MRI can assess local disease extent and proximity of the tumor to the internal os. Alternatively, pelvic transvaginal ultrasonography can be used if MRI is contraindicated. Post-treatment follow-up for stage 1A, A1 and stage 1A2, 3 monthly for past 2 years, 6 monthly for next 3 years. At 5 years, patient should send to the routine screening schedule according to national guideline. For stage 1B to stage 4, 3 to 4 monthly follow-up for past 2 to 3 years, as during the past 3 years, recurrence is high. Then 6 monthly until 5 years and annually for lifelong. I'm at the end of my presentation. Thank you everyone for hearing me. সবাইকে অশেষ ধন্যবাদ। ভাষা আন্দোলনের মাসে ভাষা শহীদদের প্রতি শ্রদ্ধা জানিয়ে আমি আমার বক্তব্য শেষ করছি।
Thank you, Dr. Rifatara. Thank you for your brilliant presentation. Now, I would like to request our renowned faculty, Dr. Rama Joshi, to go through her presentation. Dr. Rama Joshi, madam, please. Good evening.
Very good evening, Dr. Shahana. Dr. Bookman is here, and Dr. Rifat has really given a wonderful talk, and I think she has covered almost everything. I don't think so. Anything is remaining to. Greetings from Fortis Memorial Research Institute, going to all my colleagues in Bangladesh and Iqbal Quality Club. At the outset, I would like to rather congratulate you the kind of the program which you have settled for, rather you are conducting for all the, you can say the uh, fellows and the super specialties students. It's really quite encouraging. So if I was thinking of giving the talk, do you want me to deliver the talk, right?
Yes.
So in that case, I have focused my talk, taken some basic things which are to be followed whenever we are managing the patients of cervical cancer. So I think I share my screen here. So we shall be talking about, I think the burden of the disease has already been dealt with. And this is a really a major challenge for all of us, especially the developing countries, because we are contributing a lot so far as the total cancer burden is concerned globally. And based on actually the facts that when we are looking at the changing trends, then we look at in India, especially the cervical cancer is decreasing, whereas the uterine and the ovarian cancer in the population based cancer registries are increasing. But despite of this, actually, majority of the women who are being diagnosed of cervical cancer are dying of the disease. And this is mainly because they are diagnosed in advanced stage of the disease. But it looks like that over the period of the decade or so, there is likely to be change in the trend. And this is because of the efforts of the all so far as the awareness and the early diagnosis is concerned. So it's important for us to diagnose the cervical cancer in its early stage. And of course, it is the second most common cancer in India. So that is after the breast, but a decade earlier, it used to be the most common cancer. So I think few of the points which I have noted when Dr. Rifat was actually delivering her talk, I think it was wonderful and very important issues have been uh, discussed. But I just want to highlight few of the things which are of practical use to all of us. One is that once we are actually dealing with the cervical cancer, the definitive diagnosis has to be made on histopathology. Sometimes the women, they do come with that of the cytology report, which is showing the malignant cells. Of course, we cannot treat any patient based on the cytology report. It's very important for us to have the clinical assessment of the patient in general. And also, we have to go for the metastatic workup. As you have already mentioned, that metastatic workup means we have to find out whether there is any distant spread of the disease. And if that can be done by using the imaging, depending upon the facility available. But when the lesion is small, I think you can very well go ahead with that of either MRI, that is for the local, you can say the assessment, that is the regional assessment of the pelvis, or you can go for the CT scan, especially when you want to actually assess the upper abdomen. You want to assess the nodes, that is the retroperitoneal nodes, or even the pelvic nodes. They can be assessed better with the CT scan, but it varies from center to center. If you have the good MRI, almost MRI or the CT, they are almost equal, except that you can know whether the parametrium or the soft tissues surrounding the cervix are involved better by the MRI. So MRI, so far as the regional staging is concerned, this is definitely going to give a better picture in cervical cancer. And then the treatment, of course, decision is the multidisciplinary tumor board, means where you have the radiation oncologist, you have the medical oncologist, and also the gynec oncologist. They definitely decide that how best we can treat the patients. Most of the patients, they don't require any kind of the discussion, where these are the straightforward cases where we have to actually treat them based on the stage. But yes, there are sometimes a management dilemma where we have to discuss and reach to the consensus, how are we dealing in these patients. After the surgery, of course, we have to decide the adjuvant treatment based on the final histopathology. And only one thing which I would like to mention here is that whenever you are seeing the patient of cervical cancer, this is how you will see that, yes, there is some abnormality onto the cervix, means it is very much visible to you, and it is highly suspicious of malignancy. And not necessarily that whatever the cervical disease you are seeing, this is fixed in the pelvis. I think this was mentioned there, that it's a fixed growth. No, the cervix will be mobile when the growth is limited to the part of the cervix. Once it is infiltrating the parametrium and also coming onto the vaginal fornix, from there going to the parametrium involvement is going to make the disease fixed in the pelvis. So one has to take the biopsy from the lesion. What you are seeing onto the cervix, take the biopsy from the lesion. Majority of the students, when we ask from where will you take the biopsy, they say from the margin of the disease. Why margin of the disease? When you have the abnormality, you are able to see the abnormality, you have to diagnose this disease. In that case, of course, when you take the biopsy, you will see that this is what is the histopathology. Here it is the keratinizing squamous cell carcinoma, and that's how I think we can go reach to the definite diagnosis, which is very important, and also the clinical assessment. Here, I would like to make one more point, that clinical assessment, in my, I think this experience of more than 25 years, I would say, your two fingers are good enough. One in the vagina, the other one is the rectum. And between these two fingers, you are actually assessing the parametrium. And parametrium can be assessed clinically very well. And this is very supple when it is not involved. And I tell you that you can look into your own clinical practice, that how to assess the parametrium. Look into the MRI, and MRI is not going to give very correct actually assessment of the parametrium. It is the histology. Once you are going for the surgery, then you will find that the histology is definitely going to tell you whether the parametrium is involved or it is not involved. Most of the time, your clinical assessment is good enough. You should not have the involvement of the parametrium on the final histopathology specimen. I think this, why I'm not able to. Okay. So the principles, once we have made the diagnosis, once we have done the clinical, you can say the assessment, and also we have gone for the metastatic assessment, then of course, we have decided what is the clinical stage of the patient. So after that comes the role of the management. What is the appropriate management of the cervical cancer? Means we have to address the primary lesion, treatment of the primary lesion, as well as the potential sites of the lymph node metastasis, as you have seen. This is the most common management, especially when the disease is limited or the regional disease, it is not the metastatic disease. And that's how we decide what treatment we are going to go for. that is, I think, has already been told about, but just looking at the picture, it will make little clearer to you that once the disease is limited to the cervix is stage 1, of course, based on the size of the disease, and especially in 2018 FIGO classification based, whether it is less than 2 centimeters, 2 to 4 centimeters, or more than 4 centimeters, then this is what is the upper involvement of stage 2A, and this is what is 2B. That is why whenever you are examining with the 2 fingers, one is in the vagina, the other one is in the rectum, you are basically actually palpating. You reach to that of the fornix, and in between these 2 fingers, you will feel the parametrium. And that's how you can decide whether it is medially involved or it is reaching up to the lateral pelvic wall. At 4A, 4B, I think, as this has already been described, it has already been talked about. And I think very well, the points have been noted. What are the changes in the FIGO 2018? So I think I would like to focus the treatment, surgery-oriented treatment in cervical cancer. So what is early stage of the cervical cancer? We are including stage 1A, of course, 1A1, 1A2, stage 1B1, and 1B2 is also considered early stage along with stage 2A1. 2A1 means the size of the lesion is less than 4 centimeters, especially the cervical one, means it's a low volume disease. The standard of care management in these patients is the surgery or radiation therapy. I think we have to be very clear in our mind that whenever we are dealing with a patient of stage 1B1 disease, of course, we should consider the expertise available, whether we have the GYN oncosurgeons doing the proper surgery, then of course we should choose surgery in these early stages. Otherwise, we can definitely refer the patient for the radiation therapy. When it is stage 1B1, of course, we always consider the concurrent chemoradiation in these cases. So the choice of treatment definitely depends on, if you have the expertise available, then of course it depends on what is the age of the patient, whether you are going to consider fertility preservation. If the patient is young and she wants to preserve her fertility, and that is how I think we are deciding the treatment in the early stage of the cervical cancer. And here, what is important is why we are looking into the nodal status, why we want to treat the nodes, because these are the likely sites of the metastasis, and this depends upon the stage of the disease. What are we dealing with? There are likely chances of the positive pelvic node is high once the stage is going or the stage is increasing, the likely chances of the positive pelvic nodes is also high. That means we have to deal with that of the pelvic, you can say the pelvic nodal sites also, whether it is the radiation therapy or whether it is the surgery. Surgery, basically what we are dealing with, these early stages of the disease. At the same time, we are addressing the para-aortic nodal areas also. Of course, based on whether it is radiologically, you are able to detect the nodal metastasis into the para-aortic region or the pelvic region. This is what you are going to consider. Accordingly, you have to label whether it is whether the nodal actually involvement or the based on the assessment is radiological or it is pathological if you have gone for surgical staging. So after having said that, coming on to stage 1A1, what is the treatment option? Most of the time, of course, we are treating these patients of the microinvasive cervical cancer and by surgery. And these, I think, all our gynae colleagues are doing this. All of you are doing this. You can do it better with the clear understanding that these are the microscopic lesions. Because whenever you are examining the cervix naked eye, you don't see anything on the cervix. And once you are applying acetic acid, and if you are doing colposcopy, you will be able to see that these are the abnormal areas. These are the abnormal vessels. Here you can make out punctations, and these punctations are also very much of the altered sizes. Somewhere it is coarse, somewhere it is comparatively fine, or even the mosaics you are able to see. So these are all varied appearances, and with that of the pearly white, you can say the aceto white areas, very well defined margins, or maybe some kind of the rolling out of the margins are there. That means we are dealing with the high grade intraepithelial lesion. Now, again, it depends on the age of the patient. If suppose patient wants to preserve the fertility, means we have to diagnose such cases as well as treat at the same time. And what was told by Dr. Rifat was that we go for conization. And here we go for conization with a very good specification. Better to go for the colposcopy, directed conization, so that you are able to see how much of the margin you are taking here. And always go for cold knife conization, because there will not be any kind of the artifacts of the cautery at the margins. You will be able to define the margin on the histopathology properly, whether it is optimal or not. And this margin should be 3 millimeters. So actually, I like to actually take up these cases with the proper selection based on the colposcopy. And also, I always go for, say, 5 millimeter distance if it is possible, so that I'm sure if we are going to go for the fertility preservation, and if it is only 1A1 disease, then we can follow these patients just after the cold knife conization. And this actually is the key to the success. That's how we can go for. So 1A1 fertility sparing surgery, cone biopsy, as I said, that there are no LVSI. That means the LVSI also requires to be negative, though it has not been included into the staging. But it is very important factor for the management of these cervical cancers. So when both of these are negative, of course, you can very well follow up the patient. I think the patient can go ahead for that of the fertility. And on the other hand, we may get the positive margin. This presents a challenge to us, that how to treat such case later on. That means we have got the option of either going for the repeat conization, but again, I would like to mention here that if you do not have any kind of the residual rim of the cervix, it is difficult for you to do it. That means one will have to plan either going ahead for that of the radical trachelectomy, because really you do not know whether what you are treating with is a 1A1 disease or it is 1A2 disease. That means microinvasion, if suppose is there, can be more than 3 millimeters. That means, but less than 5 millimeters means it is 1A2 disease. So better to treat these patients a step higher of considering 1A2 disease. And it is important at the time when you are doing this conization. This is what is a cold knife conization. Here you can see very precisely this requires to be done. And I like to go for, 4 sutures, not as a marker, but actually this is to give the proper margin from all around and a better specification, so that I'm sure that I have removed the proper, you can say, the proper margin along with that of the abnormal area seen during the colposcopy. That's how we can go ahead with. And if suppose this cone biopsy, when shows that this is LVSI positive, lymph node evaluation is very, very important. When the lesions are small, less than say 2 centimeter size, maybe it is 1B1 disease, or it is 1A2 disease, or even if it is 1A1 with that of the LVSI positive, we can go for the sentinel node. That is, the sentinel node algorithm can be followed in these patients. Or the other option is to go for the lymphadenectomy. So completion hysterectomy may be considered. Of course, there is a question whether these women require to go for the completion hysterectomy after the childbearing is completed. That is again a question. And there are actually the different ways. Some of them, they say that there is no need of going ahead with that of the hysterectomy whenever these patients have completed. I think we do not have the final answer, but yes, they do require the complete, actually very close follow-up and in the similar way, so that actually the further any kind of the risk can be can pick up the disease later. But again, it depends on if it is 1A1 disease. I don't think so there is any need of going ahead, because number of the studies have shown and have compared with that of the hysterectomy, the outcome is very similar. But these patients require regular follow-up. So if suppose that is the problem, in that case, one can consider. So in patients where there is no non-infertility sparing surgeries to be done, of course, extrafacial hysterectomy. What is extrafacial hysterectomy is another actually concern, that why we are talking about the extrafacial hysterectomy is basically type 1 hysterectomy, where you are taking, you can say the dissection is actually above the fascia. What is this fascia? That is vesicocervical fascia. So basically you are cutting this fascia not at the level of the internal os, but you are cutting this fascia right at that of the vaginal fornix. Means a small rim of the vagina is also being taken in the type 1 hysterectomy, so that you are sure that the entire cervix has been removed. That's how we are defining this extrafacial hysterectomy. So based on this, definitely we have to consider whether we are going to go for the modified radical hysterectomy, or we have to consider the sentinel lymph node or pelvic lymphadenectomy for the nodal metastasis in these patients of 1A1 disease who are LVSI positive. In 1A2 disease, of course, fertility sparing is the radical trachelectomy, and pelvic lymph node dissection is very much recommended in these. These are usually taken as a two-step procedures. Or the other option is, instead of the pelvic lymph node dissection, one can go for the sentinel node mapping, which can be considered for these patients. The cone biopsy is followed by the observation if margins are negative and the pelvic lymph node dissection is negative. Non-fertility sparing surgery, of course, we can go for the modified radical hysterectomy. This is nothing but type 2 or class B hysterectomy. That is the answer for 1A2 disease, along with the pelvic lymph node dissection or sentinel lymph node dissection. Surgery, the standard of care in the early invasive cervical cancer is the type 3 hysterectomy and pelvic lymphadenectomy or concurrent chemoradiation. That's how it should be considered. I just wanted to tell here, this is what is the specimen of the radical hysterectomy. This is where the cervix is. And what you can see here is the parametrium removed that was right up to the lateral pelvic wall. So in radical hysterectomy, it is important for us to understand that how much of the tissue requires to be removed. If we are doing the dissection only and not removing the proper parametrium, that means we are really, I mean to say, I do not know how to deal with that kind of a situation. So the basic understanding is what you are removing at the time of the radical hysterectomy. How much of the vaginal wall to be removed? Maybe usually it is say 2 centimeters, which should be good enough. And the parametrium based on whether you are doing type T, type 2 or type 3 radical hysterectomy. And of course, the pelvic lymph node dissection. You can always judge how much of the vaginal wall has been excised with that of the specimen. And that's how one should be satisfied. Sometimes you may require to just take a rim of it and do the best. This is what is the picture of the intraoperative pelvic lymph node dissection. Usually, actually, we take this site, what is the proximal limit, usually where the ureter crosses the iliac vessels and goes to the medial side. You just have, that is the level where it should be the upper limit or the proximal limit of the pelvic lymph node dissection. And this is what you will find that after you have done complete radical hysterectomy, this is what is the picture after the, you can say the complete clean pelvic, after the pelvic lymph node dissection, and unification of the paravesical and the pararectal space. That is another thing which one should really be looking into. Here is a vaginal vault. And here, this is what is the ureter and the uretrovesical junction. So this is what it looks like. So actually this was compared whether we should go for, is there any benefit of doing the primary surgery or the radiation therapy, whether the radiation therapy in early stage of the disease is offering the similar survival benefit or the surgery. Of course, this was answered by the historical or the landmark trial by Lantini et al. This was way back in 1997. What this trial had actually come up with few very important points is the 1B1 disease. The survival results were comparatively significantly better in comparison to 1B2 disease. And here 1B2 is taken as the tumor size more than 4 centimeters. So less than 4 centimeters, actually, here you can see the survival results are more than 90%. And the survival drops down significantly once it is 1B2 disease or more than 4 centimeters. Now, the other point is whether you are doing surgery or surgery-based treatment or the radiation-based treatment, this offers the similar survival results in either of the arm. So that is why we had become wiser after this trial. How can we avoid the morbidity that requires to be seen rather than doing the surgery and selecting the patients in a better way? This trial had also given us the idea that yes, the subset analysis had shown that these are the adenocarcinomas which do better with that of the surgery rather than that of the radiation. And where the two treatments were combined after the radiation, after the surgery, the radiation when was added in the adjuvant setting, the morbidity was almost double. So we had become wiser after this trial that why not to select the patients who are of the smaller size, who are having the lesion which is smaller size, where there is likely chance that we are not going to go for any kind of the adjuvant radiation therapy. So these are the issues which have been incorporated into the practice, and that's how we are actually following up these cases. Of course, the para-aortic node dissection, where we have to go for the para-aortic node dissections in cases like 1B2 means 1B2 or 1B3 disease. That's how you remove the para-aortic nodes. But whether we should really be doing it or this is just for the sake of the staging purpose, I think we have to be gaining little more experience. But 1B3 disease actually will have around say 15% of the positive para-aortic node, so that we can know whether we have to extend the adjuvant treatment in such cases in the to the retroperitoneal or para-aortic region. There have been some emerging treatment trends of the early stage cervical cancer, which is focusing on quality of life, as we have seen, that is the fertility preservation and what is the treatment related morbidity. These are again two issues which are very, very important in order to give the quality of life to these patients who have been treated for this cervical cancer. Treatment related morbidity means, I just want to mention only one thing which we are seeing in our practice day to day, that incomplete surgery is not an indication for radiation therapy. So I think whenever we are doing surgery, be sure what we are doing, that should be optimal, so that when there is no indication for the adjuvant radiation therapy based on, say, for example, the Sedlis criteria, Now, SEDLIS criteria includes three things. One is the size of the lesion. The other one is the depth of infiltration of the lesion into the cervical stroma, and also the LVSI. Now, when the LVSI is negative, that means LVS, when any two of these is positive, these are positive, that becomes an indication for adjuvant radiation therapy. So when you have done actually the surgery up to the extent required, then you don't have to consider radiation therapy at all if there is no SEDLIS criteria. And you can actually follow these patients without any problem. And one can become more confident with more experience. That's how I think we should be taking it up. So what is important is the optimal radicality. This is what is the parametrium right up to the lateral pelvic wall. And here we have to consider three, you can say, the parts of this parametrium. This is what is the uterosacral. This is what is the vesico-cervical or the pubo-vesico-cervical ligament. This basically we are excising at this particular level. Again, it depends on whether we are doing type 2, type 3 radical hysterectomy. So the radicality of the hysterectomy depends on whether you are going for extrafacial. Extrafacial is type 1. If it is type 2, means you are removing the parametrium right at the site or in the location where there is the ureter, which actually traverses within this parametrium. So you will have to dissect this ureter at the level of the ureter. You will be dissecting the parametrium and reflecting the ureter laterally, and then taking the medial parametrium in with this specimen. That is type 2. And type 3, when of course you have dissected the ureter, you have actually mobilized the ureter. You can mobilize it medially so that you can take this parametrium from the lateral side, but you will have to dissect the ureter from the medial aspect also, so that you are totally making the ureter free. You just lift it up completely. And you can see right up to that of the uretrovesical junction. So that's how the optimal radicality requires to be matched based on the size of the tumor. If it is less than 2 centimeters, you can very well come up with that of the type 2 hysterectomy. If it is more than 2 centimeters, of course, one should go for, there is no place for type 2, one should go for type 3. And we are also concerned with that of the postoperative complications. So optimal surgical treatment is important, and that is how we are considering, based on the final histopathology, all the pathological factors. Fertility preservation in early stage cervical cancer has been defined very well by the radical trachelectomy, which can be abdominal radical trachelectomy or the vaginal radical trachelectomy. It can be laparoscopically assisted also, and otherwise. So these are all the criteria which we are taking whenever we are going for the fertility preservation. I think I've already mentioned about it. Laparoscopic assisted vaginal radical trachelectomy, I think Dr. Darjon has got a very, he had been the pioneer in this field. And I was fortunate enough to be with him for some time. What I liked in this approach was, this was considered for the smaller lesions. When the lesion was small and onto the exocervix, then you can consider for the radical trachelectomy. There should be a thorough counseling of the patient. It's very, very important. The patient should be really interested in going for the fertility preservation. And one should rather assess what are the infertility or the fertility factors which are important in that particular patient, so that one can counsel what are the chances. Otherwise, I think it may be a total waste, or we may not be successful in extending the fertility preservation to these patients. These are usually taken for the patients who are not having any adenocarcinoma or the small cell histology. But now I think algorithm is changing. People are considering adenocarcinoma or adenosquamous carcinoma, which are having less than 2 centimeter, and the lesion is onto the exocervix, and the inner margin is quite free in these patients. So it is considered as a two-step procedure where we have to prove that the lymph nodes are negative. Because if the lymph nodes are positive, we will have to extend the radiation therapy to these patients, rather CTRT. So we want to prove that the lymph nodes are negative, then only we take up the radical trachelectomy in these patients. This is what is the Darjan's two-step procedure. Almost say about just below the internal os, the cervix is excised, and the cervix along with that of the medial parametrium as well as the upper 2 centimeters of the vagina is excised with that of the radical trachelectomy. And that's how I think the decision is taken on the final histology as well as the lymphadenectomy and all, so that we know how the patient is going to go ahead for the success of the pregnancy. It has also been seen and reported that in vaginal trachelectomy and abdominal trachelectomy, the pregnancy rates of the vaginal trachelectomy were comparatively higher, and the recurrence rate were almost the same. Here, the mortality was higher in this particular study, which was reported. This was mainly because they had included the patients of more than 2 centimeters also. And that is why with this experience, the size criteria has been included in these patients. There have been studies which were looked into whether radical trachelectomy versus radical hysterectomy. And this is what was a systemic review. Of course, we don't have any kind of level 1 evidence or randomized trial regarding this, but this shows that there had been no difference in the overall survival or the recurrence-free survival in these patients of the radical hysterectomy or the radical trachelectomy. So we had become little more confident in actually extending this kind of the treatment. In order to avoid the dual treatment, as I have already mentioned, I think we have to be careful in choosing the patients for the surgery. This is what is very, very important. And the para-aortic node dissections may be performed, especially for the patients with larger tumors, because we are likely to miss otherwise the nodal metastasis into the para-aortic nodal region. In order to reduce you can say the morbidity of the procedures, there have been the nerve sparing radical hysterectomy also. And the technique is of the preserving the nerve, and this nerve preservation is very, very important. And this is to actually rather improve upon the bladder function as well as the bowel function. That's how the nerve preservation is important in the radical hysterectomy. But again, it depends on what is the size and what is the lesion which you are dealing with. And these are the, actually, there has been the latest classification of the Querlo-Moro classification, which is looking into type A, B, B1, B2, C1, and C2. These are the various types or the classes of the hysterectomies. These are again showing the radicality of the hysterectomies, and the radicality is slightly better defined than that of the Pivers classification. And that is C1 is the one where we are removing, like similar to that of type 3, and C2, class C1 and class C2. These are the two, you can say, the radical hysterectomies, similar to that of type 3 hysterectomies. So benefits of the surgery in the early stage, of course, the cure rates are equal, as we have seen. The removal of, we get to see the pathological specimen, and we can go for the accurate surgical staging whenever we are dealing with that of the surgical management of these patients. Of course, we can extend the better quality of life if there is no adjuvant treatment, and we can tailor the adjuvant therapy based on the risk factors in these patients, whether you are going to go for the adjuvant radiation or extended field radiation or the adjuvant concurrent chemoradiation based on the risk factors. That's how I think it's important. And this is what the randomized study, which had shown between the radical surgery and radiation therapy, 20 years update. This was again the original article. The surgical treatments, same efficacy as that of the RT when the size of the tumor was no larger than 3 centimeters. Means, again, there is another evidence to suggest that less than 3 centimeters, please go ahead for the surgery. Maybe that after 3 centimeter, better not to do the surgery and send the patients for the concurrent chemoradiation. But again, the cervical adenocarcinoma, whether it is regardless of the diameter, surgery still confirms as a better choice. So once it is adenocarcinoma, be little more wiser in selecting the patients for surgery rather than sending them for chemoradiation. This is what is the adjuvant therapy. This again depends on what is the lymph node status, parametrium, and margins. I think this is going to go long. I think adjuvant treatment post surgery. This is what is important. Lymph nodes negative, parametrium negative, margins negative. Of course, here again we have to consider the set list criteria based on which we are going to go for the adjuvant radiation therapy or not. And this is adjuvant therapy post radiation, post surgery, post surgery radiation therapy only. And this is what is the set list criteria. Based on that, we can consider there have been the role of sentinel node, and the sentinel node, again, based on the NCCN guidelines, the consideration of the sentinel node mapping algorithm to be followed only in the tumors less than 2 centimeters of the diameter. So that's how we can go for. And I think this is, there shouldn't be any suspicious node there, and any suspiciously enlarged nodes requires to be removed, and we don't have to consider sentinel node in these patients. Otherwise, I think the algorithm is not being followed, so we can't really take them up. Sometimes it happens when the size is even less than 2 centimeters, the nodes may be suspicious. Always send these nodes, remove them during the surgery, and always send it for the adjuvant radiation therapy. That is why whenever you are doing fertility sparing surgery, rather we have to be more confident, and we can go for the dual time approach of the lymph node dissection first, get the final histopathology when the nodes are not suspicious, and then go ahead and do the second procedure of the radical trachelectomy. Otherwise, when the sentinel node is, of course, positive, then we can abandon the procedure and go for the concurrent chemoradiation as that of the primary treatment for these patients. So that's how these trials are still, I think, ongoing prospective trials, and they are going to give us the result that where we should be wiser in doing the sentinel node and where we should not be offering the sentinel nodes. So based on the MIS in the cervical cancer, of course, this had been a major issue, and I think all of us are aware by now that this was the LACC trial, which had rather shown the very inferior survival results of the laparoscopic surgery or the minimal access surgery. So since then, I don't think so. We are all in favor of the minimal access laparoscopic surgery in cervical cancer. And that is why I think we are becoming wiser in offering the overall survival of 99% rather than that of 93%. Disease-free survival, very inferior, that's 86% in those patients going for the minimal access laparoscopic surgery. So I think just to conclude, about, I have focused my talk only on the cervical, you can say the surgery and the type of surgery which we can do in cervical cancer, so that I think we can address this issue well. So with this, I thank you all for the patient hearing. If any questions, I can take it up.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your nice and elaborate presentation. We have many other the foreign faculties, they have joined with us probably, and all the participants, please, you raise your hand if you have any questions and ask the question. When you will raise your hands, then you will be automatically unmuted, and you please ask if you have any question. And otherwise, you can put your question on the chat box so our faculty can answer the questions. Dr. Shyam Srivastava, probably he is Srivastava sir. He has joined with us. I request Srivastava sir to comment on the radiation aspect of the cancer cervix, the treatment. Srivastava sir.
Ma'am, sir left, I guess.
7 minutes. Okay. Probably Dr. Rupendra Shekhar, she is the president, she is the Secretary General of Association of Gynecologists Oncologists of the India. She has just joined now. I request Dr. Rupendra ma'am to comment on the surgical aspect and staging, and also sometimes we get the patients who come with us with the incomplete surgery, or sometimes there's a simple hysterectomy. In that cases, how do you proceed and what can you do in that patient? And also the other, if you have any comment. Rupendra ma'am, please.
Yeah, good evening, Dr. Shahana, and good evening, everybody else. Sorry, I've just joined and I missed out on most of Rama's presentation. But just a comment or two, like you asked me, what would we do if a patient comes to us with a simple hysterectomy and the hysterectomy specimen says there is a CS cervix. So it's very simple. It is cervix. We just send the patient for radiation, give them the benefit of doubt, and let them have full radiation, full complement of radiation, that is EBRT as well as ICRT. It is pointless trying to do any kind of completion surgeries and all of that, because we have to remember that for CS cervix, it's extremely important to remove the parametrium. Now, if you have done a simple hysterectomy, there is no way that you can go back and do some kind of parametrectomy or something to that effect, which some people want to attempt, or even if they want to do. Such a patient will have best results if you just give them a complete radiation. So, but before doing that, it is sometimes wise to do a PET scan if it is available. If a PET scan is not available, you can do a simple CT scan, because that will also give you an insight as to any kind of lymph nodal enlargement in the suprapelvic region. You will have some amount of lymph node enlargement in the pelvis. That is probably because of the surgery. No, they would probably because of an infective or an inflammatory element. But any enlargement of nodes in the para-aortic region will alert you to refashion your treatment in a way that you are able to cover the para-aortic nodes as well. Whether it is that you first want to do an FNAC on the para-aortic nodes and prove that this is a disease, or you want to, and if you want to just go ahead and while you're giving EBRT, you want to cover the para-aortic region as well.
How much size of the tumor in cervix still you are doing the surgery? Either 2 centimeter or more than 2 centimeter or less than 3.5 centimeter?
So we are generally limiting our surgeries to a tumor of less than 4 centimeters. But sometimes there are exceptional circumstances. If it's a very young patient and you want to do a ovary sparing surgery, you want to spare the ovaries, then we sometimes do do a radical hysterectomy, even if the tumor is more than 4 centimeters. However, such a tumor should be exophytic. Any endophytic tumor going to the endocervical canal, a barrel-shaped growth, regardless of the size, even if the parametrum is soft, we should not attempt to do surgery, because this tumor would definitely be invading the stroma, and most of it, and this patient will land up with 2 modalities of treatment, that is surgery as well as radiation.
But sometimes if it is in 3.5 or around 4 centimeter tumor, we go for the surgery. Invariably, these patients, they have their stromal invasion, more than half of the stromal invasion. In that case, we also need the adjuvant radiation. Even after that, we will go for the radical hysterectomy.
No, see, this is
Always.
a difficult decision, and I'm sure even Dr. Rama would be able to tell us about her experiences. See, if it is, you make a judgment, like I said, that if it's an exophytic tumor, a cauliflower-like growth, which is some 3.5 centimeters, 4 centimeters, and the bilateral parametrum is soft, one does go ahead with surgery. And then, of course, once the surgery is done and you get the histopathology, one would want to apply the SETI's criteria to it. However, sometimes you get surprised that even in such a case, there is a through and through stromal invasion, then you have to give radiation. So it's a kind of a very well thought up clinical assessment. And on the other hand, sometimes even when the tumor is very small, just 2 centimeters, or just say something 2 by 1.5 by 1 centimeter or something to that effect, and you think you have done a very nice surgery, you have taken away all of the parameters right to the lateral pelvic wall, then a complete lymphadenectomy, you get surprised that 2 centimeter, 1.5 centimeter tumor is invading the full stromal invasion. So in that event, you will have to give adjuvant radiation.
There are some questions in the set box. That is there any number of the node that can tell that the optimum lymphadenectomy is done? Roma ma'am, please.
If you have total, say, I think it's 12 nodes. If you have total 12 nodes minimum, then you can actually predict that yes, whatever the lymph node dissection is can be considered as that of the lymph node dissection. But usually in practice, what we see that these nodes are more than 16. Most of the time, you will find the nodes are more than 16. But again, there is variation in counting the nodes. Your pathologist requires to be very much conversant with the procedure, and they should not be doing the berry picking, as otherwise, I mean to say, they are counting the nodes and submitting them to that of the histological section. Here, the entire, whatever the nodal, the tissue you have removed as that of the nodes, that is fibrofatty tissue, this requires to be processed. The entire of this tissue requires to be processed thoroughly. This is very, very important, because sometimes very tiny nodes in the pelvic region, because the fibrous tissue is quite a lot. And you will find that very small, tiny nodes, you are able to count them under the microscope. You are not able to actually feel them. So it's very, very important, but on an average, around 16 nodes, if you have, that's good enough, but up to 12 can be considered as that, yes, you have done the good lymph node dissection. Shahana, one more comment actually, based on the size of the lesion. See, as Dr. Rupinder has also mentioned, the size of the lesion, again, it depends on how you are assessing, because the 3 important criteria for the set list. One is the size of the lesion, while during my presentation I had mentioned. The other one is the depth of stromal invasion. These 2 things you can know, right? If the size of the lesion is less than 4 centimeters and the depth of infiltration is not that deep, so you definitely can go ahead for that of the surgery, because these 2, there should be minimum 2 criteria present for the SED list to be followed. Means after the surgery, you are going to go for radiation therapy. So if you are choosing the smaller size, you are already, I mean to say, taking out the patients who require radiation therapy. So selecting the criteria, and for, you can say, to begin with, you can always choose all patients of less than 2 centimeters, no doubt, less than 3 centimeters also, or less than 4 centimeters also. But assess them, as was already mentioned by even Rupinder, that if it is an exophytic growth, right? If it is an exophytic growth, it is not infiltrative growth, but infiltrative growths are really bad. Infiltrative growth, you will not be able to see, and you will see that this is infiltrating the entire stromal thickness. So in exophytic growth, you can be wiser in selecting the patients rather than that of the infiltrative growth. One more small comment. I think you had asked for the hysterectomy. Rupinder is in favor of giving the, you can say, the radiation to the patient and giving the, of course, the whatever the benefit can be extended to the patient, but I slightly differ here. If I see on the hysterectomy specimen, the size of the tumor is 2 centimeters or less, would like to go for the, and there is no LVSI, and the depth of infiltration is comparatively, say, less than 50%, I will definitely go for the parametrectomy and the pelvic lymph node dissection, because we will be able to avoid the radiation in such cases. So if it is a small tumor on the removed specimen, which may be most of the time might not have been diagnosed, then in that case, we can go for the parametrectomy. You actually send the specimen histopathology, you will get to know parametrium is normal, the lymph nodes are negative. Of course, the treatment is done for this patient. So that's the way I think I select the patient for the parametrectomy in the smaller lesions of the cervical cancer.
That is, if it is less than 2 centimeters, in that case?
Yes, in that case. And I have done a number of cases and I have not given them any radiation. We are just following them up.
But if it is in stage 1, B2, there is some.
No. In that case, I don't. I limit myself to less than 2 centimeters in selecting these patients.
Can I add a comment to that, please?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
See, what Dr. Rama is saying is definitely makes a lot of theoretical sense. There is no doubt about that. Only thing is that to add to this, we get such exact histopathological reports. To get such exact histopathological reports is very rare, because they will not, the grossing is not done properly, because it would not be a cancer center, and the histopathology would also not be so great. Then when you ask them for slides and blocks, then that is another measure. And let us not forget, we would definitely have to do a cuff of vagina as well in such patients.
Of course, we have to remove. Parametrectomy means it involves, Rupinder, it involves the upper 2 centimeters to 3 centimeters of the vagina. Naturally, as we are doing in the radical hysterectomy.
Yeah.
It is exactly the same way. And I agree with you, but it depends. These things can be done from center to center only. This cannot be generalized. But what I just said, that it depends on the experience and from center to center, whether you can go ahead with that good pathology. Of course, these are the, you can say, the bottom line of the management of cervical cancer. You should have a proper pathology. Without that, you can't decide whether you are going to go for even the adjuvant radiation therapy or not, whether you are going to go for the adjuvant chemotherapy or not. It is understood that in such a scenario, we should have a good pathological report. But yes, these are the kind of the procedures cannot be actually done in the general setting. That's how I think I take it as.
Yeah, quite right. I think the message to our assembled audience today, I would, give the message that definitely adjuvant radiotherapy should be your treatment of choice. As far as parametrectomy and bilateral pelvic lymphadenectomy or other bilateral pelvic lymph node clearance, we have to do a complete clearance when we're talking in terms of cervix, is to be limited to people who are experts in this and to very, very few cancer centers which are doing this on regular basis. I'm not sure I want to advise others to kind of even attempt this kind of a thing, because in such a situation, injury to the ureters is a very, very real thing. So let us not complicate matters more. Is already, on a back foot. So that's my thought on it, that perhaps, in lesser centers, we need to give radiation.
Yes, ma'am. What is the advantage of this, the restaging in figure 2018, that is in cervical cancer stage 1B, it is 1B1, B2 and B3. Previously, it was 1B1 and B2. Now it is up to 1B3. What is the advantage of these changes? That 1B3, it is more than 4 centimeter or equal to 4 centimeters. So we'll go when directly, we will postpone the surgery when you directly go for adjuvant chemoradiation. Is it that? What is the advantage?
Okay, I think to answer this, why FIGO has taken, in 2018, the size criteria, this is based on you can say the outcome. Whatever is the outcome of in the cervical cancer, it is very much dependent on the size of the tumor. And once the size of the tumor, the likely chance of you can say the survival results of the size, which is less than 2 centimeters, and 2 to 4 centimeters are very different than that of less than 2 centimeters. That is why they have split the tumors based on the tumor size, less than 2 centimeters, 2 to 4 centimeters. And then they have taken the third category, that is more than 4 centimeters, where the size, based on this particular size, the survival results were very, very inferior. That is why this category can be separated to less than 2 centimeters and more than 4 centimeters. I think that was a criteria in 2018.
Yes. So the take home message from here, that we must have to be aware of the size of the tumor, that if it is more than 4 centimeter or equal to 4 centimeter, then there is the chance of the needed adjuvant chemoradiation or radiation is more.
Yes.
So we must have to sure about the size of the tumor before going to any surgery.
And yes, the other thing is, one of the study which I have shown, that clearly tells when it is less than 3 centimeters, the surgery is, surgery does better, but more than 3 centimeters, radiation therapy does better. So I think we should be wiser in selecting not only 4 centimeters, but even less than 4 centimeters to up to 3 centimeters. But again, one point is very, very important, that be careful in selecting whether it is less than 2 centimeters also. If it is the infiltrative kind of a lesion, infiltrating the entire cervical wall, maybe less than 2 centimeters, there's no point in taking such patients for surgery. Send them, even those cases of the less than 2 centimeters, what you feel is the disease, to the chemoradiation, right? So I think it depends on the selection criteria. Select the patient where you are not likely to go for radiation for the surgery. That should be the bottom line.
So Rama, it is Kamal here. Thanks for the presentation.
Oh, Dr. Kamal, I was just actually looking for you. Where were you?
I'm here.
Missed you.
No, I'm there. I was there from the beginning.
Very good that Shahana is around at least. Yeah. So that I can see Shahana and I can feel that, oh, she is very much here.
Right? I was from the beginning there. So I want to add 2 points. First, the discussion, the lively discussion between you and Rupinder about the hysterectomy and what to do. And I totally agree with both of you that yes, there is room for completion. But again, I go with Rupinder that we should be very cautious who is doing and where it is doing.
Right.
So, rather it is better to take some morbidity than to take a risk, because when somebody is doing a completion surgery, it may be doing some injury, number one. Number two, without completing a proper surgery, I mean, we are losing the chance of giving her the cure. This is number one. And coming back to this FIGO staging of 1B, 1, 2, and 3, I think the simplest message that you said is the survival and also the treatment modality. Because below 2, surgery, fine. Above 4, radiation, fine. 2 to 4 is a gray zone. Yeah. So again, nobody can say that, yes, we should do surgery. Nobody said, no, don't do surgery. So we should treat this zone as a gray zone. So you brought a reference of 3 centimeter. You know, so many things are happening. Not only the size, the type of the lesion, location, and also the status of the patient, imaging, everything. So the message I think that is, yes, 1B1 is the best part with a very good survival, and obviously we should go for surgery unless there is any contraindication for it. But the moment it is 1B2, we should bring the patient in the multidisciplinary tumor board, that what is the pros and cons, and also discuss with the patient, and then we can take a decision. But the moment it is again 1B3, no need of any discussion. Hardly there is any room for any surgery. It is category 2B. Just put the patient on non-surgical intervention. I think this could be another message to our colleagues in a very simplistic way. With the survival, 1B2 is the area, as you said, no, all patients don't need to be an MDT, but 1B2 is the real classic area where we need MDT, and also we need to listen to the patient, that what she wants, because sometimes somebody wants surgery, sometimes somebody don't want surgery. So this is the area where we can give them an option. But 1B1, probably even patient wants, I will push not to go for radiation. And 1B3, even patient wants, you will not go for surgery, even patient wants. So that is, I think, the message here.
I think your point is very well taken, Dr. Kamal. And that is why I think we had, whatever the way we could really come up with this topic well. But one thing I just want to let you know, that whatever we are doing, of course, it requires some kind of the infrastructure, some kind of the training, then only the things can be done. So far as that is true, so even for that of the radical hysterectomy, based on the facilities available, one can choose the type of the treatment they are going to decide. So let us not compromise based on the, you can say, the expertise available and facilities available. These are the two very important criteria for us. And based on that, we decide. Of course, there are few things which cannot be made, you can say, cannot be generalized, in the sense that doing some specialized procedures, of course, we cannot generalize them. And that can be done like parametrectomy, whatever I said. I think we have a good experience of that. But again, it depends on from center to center. This has been very well accepted as that of the modality of the treatment for such cases. But again, here also the selection is very, very important. Not going to select the patient who are having the SETLIS criteria already existing means she will require radiation in any way. So there is no room for the parametrectomy in such cases also. I think it's very, very important decision when to do what, and also in the specialized centers. And also so far as the size criteria, I think to begin with, 1B1 disease is the one where we should go for surgery, as Dr. Kamal has said. I absolutely agree with you. And that's how I think we are also following. But again, it depends on whether it is less than 3 centimeters or more than 3 centimeters. But there is no choice more than 4 centimeters. For surgery, better to go for chemoradiation.
Okay. There is another question from Dr. Shalini saying that if histology is adenocarcinoma on simple hysterectomy, what will be her approach? Dr. Ugen, probably she raised hand.
Hysterectomy?
Adenocarcinoma on simple hysterectomy.
Adenocarcinoma, whether it is cervical? Adenocarcinoma, yes, taking it cervical. Primary as a cervical, or it is taken as endometrium?
Yes.
Cervical.
Yes. Cervical.
So it is the same, cervical. I think. It doesn't change. And yes, adenocarcinoma, basically, if it is endocervical canal, and again, depth of infiltration and all, it remains the same, whether it is the squamous cell carcinoma or adenocarcinoma, because one has already removed the uterus, right? So in that case, whether one is going to go for the concurrent chemo radiation or radiation, again depends on you can say the assessment of the patient clinically, as well as that of the metastatic workup. And based on the extent of the disease, as the residual, one decides what kind of the treatment one is going to offer.
So I think Ramashi wanted to raise the issue that when it is the adeno, we know from the this Landoni trial that the surgery is doing better in adeno. So if the surgery done, primary hysterectomy is done, it is not squamous, it is adeno. Will there be more preference to the completion surgery as we were discussing? So maybe that is the point she wants to.
Yeah. All right, probably Dr. Ugen from.
It depends the same. I think it doesn't change.
Okay. So there is a question from Ugen.
Ugen, yes.
What about what about the role of neoadjuvant chemo?
Yes.
Is there any role of neoadjuvant chemo?
No, I don't think so. Neoadjuvant
cervical
chemotherapy
disease before radiation or before surgery?
No, I think we already have one randomized trial that's from even from India, TMH, that had shown that there is no, actually NACT doesn't improve the survival or doesn't improve the outcome. So I think we are not considering NACT in routine so far as the management of cervical cancer is concerned.
Yes, and it is also the NCCN guideline.
If I can just please add to that question by again on NACT.
Yes.
Now, there was a Argentinian gynecologist who had brought out his, he made a presentation in TMH. What he said was that in Argentina, they have very, very few radiation machines. So the patients, if they want treatment, either there is a very long wait, so long that CA cervix from stage 2 will become stage 3 by the time their turn comes, or it is not available at all. In such an instance, patients are often given neoadjuvant chemotherapy. In fact, even in Delhi, in some of the colleges where the radiation was not so available, our gynecologists, they used to give neoadjuvant chemotherapy and follow that surgery. And if in the histopathological specimen, there is complete pathological response, neoadjuvant therapy was given. So to take that as an algorithm, neoadjuvant chemotherapy can definitely be tried in what was being discussed earlier, a 1B3 stage CA cervix, in such a, especially where the patient is young and where surgery can be offered and patient is willing for surgery. So in such a patient, you can give neoadjuvant chemotherapy, shrink the growth, do surgery. Just many times your histopathology report will show a complete response and the patient is fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we are probably Dr. Rama.
I think, Rupinder, regarding the comment, as we are on a platform, what I want to make a small additional comment here, that many practice are happening for many resource limited situation.
Yeah,
but the problem is the Tata group, they have shown the inferiority. It is not that you cannot do, you can do, but the outcome is better, worse with neoadjuvant. That was the message from the Tata group, number one. Number two, we can also ask about the waiting time chemotherapy, neoadjuvant chemotherapy for radiation. The Brazilian group have shown that neoadjuvant chemotherapy followed by radiotherapy showing inferior outcome than straightaway radiochemotherapy. And the explanation they gave, probably by giving chemotherapy, as you said, all are not very fortunate to have a complete pathological response. Those who are partially responding, we are creating maybe some resistance clone who are not responding as they were supposed to respond with chemoradiotherapy. So that's why, ESCO in 2018, they proposed the guideline for resource limited setup to add neoadjuvant chemotherapy, but they have removed it after the TMH publication. Because
Yes,
after this RCT, as you said, in compelling circumstances, we can do it, but the message from the junior is it is not a standard recommendation.
yes, absolutely.
No rule, yeah.
Qualified by a statement by saying that yes, it is
Yes,
not
Dr.
care, but it can definitely be used in exceptional circumstances and where, like you said, Kamal, that you have resource limited situations, and we can use neoadjuvant chemotherapy over there. And
yeah.
when you look at it in another way, as has been put forward in some papers, especially papers which have been published in radiation oncology journals, any tissue which is resistant to chemotherapy is going to be equally resistant to radiation as well. The explanation might be what Dr. Kamal said just now, that, you know, by giving chemotherapy, you have created some resistant clones. But whatever the reason may be, a tissue
No, that was a hypothesis. That was not an explanation. They were thinking why it was inferior, but we don't know. But observation was the neoadjuvant followed by radiotherapy gave worse survival in Brazilian study.
Yes.
Because nobody has done this, but they have done this. You know, Brazil, they do some crazy study sometimes. So they have done this and they have shown that the waiting time, then go to radiotherapy and neoadjuvant followed by radiotherapy, the neoadjuvant group done worse. So that was a message, but we don't know what is the reason. So that was the reality, especially the Tata group. And they have shown that with the RCT, that neoadjuvant surgery and was giving around 12 or 13% less survival.
We are very happy. Dr. Roma, she wants to leave. So Kamal bhai, I would like to give thanks to all. And before that, Dr. Roma, you please wait for just a minute. And I would like, is there anybody? Yeah. I would like to give comment on this presentation. And Kamal bhai, you please give your comment. And after that, Dr. Roma and other faculties, they want to leave. And then we will show the poll questions. And our participants are requested to wait to voting for the poll questions. Kamal bhai, please.
So I think we had enough discussion. Cervical cancer is an enjoyable discussion area where we all have some roles. And when I have no role, I have some role to support my colleagues. And when surgeons have no role, they can support us. So this is an ideal disease where real MDT works. So I enjoy discussing cervical cancer, and I really enjoyed both the lecture of Rifat and Roma. And this idea, Roma, why we asked you to make the same presentation, we wanted that our juniors should take the courage of making a presentation, and then listening to you, they will understand how they could have improved their presentation, how they should emphasize the point, clinical points. So this will, I mean, it is a type of mentorship, you can say that. That's why we bothered you to not to make a comment, rather to make a lecture. So this is the objective of this design. And thanks to Rupinder by joining and enriching our resources. And I'm sure this was a wonderful discussion, and we cannot cover everything, but we covered something. And from this session, some of us will be carrying some information, and we may change some of our practice. That is our target. And the most important is we should start doing evidence-based medicine. We don't have should not be in the era of experience-based medicine. That era has gone. Now we are in the era of patient-centered evidence-based medicine. So I want to thank you to both of you. It is very late, and thanks for giving your time, and please keep on supporting us. We are trying to go slowly forward, and this journey is only possible with the support from all your friends from different parts of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you very much, Dr. Kamal, Dr. Shahana. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, Samir, please show the poll question.
The questions will be for 30 seconds.
Yes, a 45 years lady diagnosed as a case of carcinoma cervix by histopathology confirmation, and her parvaginal findings are a 4.3 centimeter exophytic growth in the cervix. All the furnaces are free. Both parametrium are free. Then the stage will be. 93% have correct answers, and we request you all to for voting. Only 60% participants has voted. Second questions: a 50 years lady diagnosed clinically as a case of carcinoma cervix 1B2 and underwent radical hysterectomy with bilateral pelvic lymph node dissection. On histopathology report, vaginal cup and parametrium are free of tumor. 2 pelvic lymph nodes found metastatic change. What will be her next treatment plan? There is 64% have correct answer. That is external beam radiation with concurrent chemotherapy and brachytherapy. The third question is, in carcinoma cervix, when there is metastasis in para-aortic lymph nodes in CT scan, the stage will be 3C1P, 3C1R, 3C2P, 3C2R. As we all know that if there is pelvic lymph node positive, then it is 3 pelvic lymph node, then it is 3C1, and if it is para-aortic lymph node positive, then it is 3C2 according to 2018 FIGO staging. And it is pathological lymph node positive, then it is 3C1P, and if it is radiological lymph node positive pelvic lymph node, then it is 3C1R. And if it is pathological para-aortic lymph node positive, then it is 3C2P, and it is radiological pelvic lymph node positive, then it is 3C2R. So 79% has given the corrected answer. Thank you, Samir. Then you please go for who are the owner of today's session. Show the results. And I request all the winners, you please put your phone number and you please on your video. Otherwise, we cannot contact with you and we cannot share your, or you cannot send the gift to you if you don't share your phone number. Samir. Who are the winner? Dr. Nazma Siddiq, Dr. Noor Sherazum, and Dr. Monica Dewan. Please introduce yourself. All the three winners. Monica Dewan, you are from? Samir, unmute these three.
All of them are unmuted.
Yes, Nazma Siddiqa, she is Lieutenant Colonel Nazma Siddiqa. We know her and we have her phone number. Monica Dewan, you are from Gwalior. Monica Dewan, Samir. Monica Dewan.
She is from Gwalior, Gwalior, India.
Yeah, Gwalior. Yes. Another one, Samir.
No, Noor Shirajum.
Noor Shirajum.
Dr. Noor Shirajum.
Who is she? Dr. Noor Shirajum. Are you here?
Sir, Madam, Dr. Noor Shirajum, unmute. Samir, unmute.
Sir, I have done my part, sir. She has to unmute herself.
Dr. Noor Shirajum, আপনি কি unmute করে নেন?
Please unmute yourself. Yes, now it's okay.
I'm from Chittagong Shishuja Hospital.
Yeah, Pa.
I mean,Apa.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Appa. Thank you very much for putting in our 4 questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Shana.
Yes, 2 of them have the phone number with me. Come on, bhai. What will do for the Dr.
Gwalior, we have the phone number. So, from Gwalior, Dr. Monica Dewan, please put
Yes,
your
Monica
email number also. Please put your email number.
Email ID and phone number.
Yes, put. Dr. Monica, please put your email number.
Email ID, yes. Dr. Monica.
Samir, keep the phone number. We can contact her with the phone number also. She has given the email number, so keep it.
Email ID, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Now I would like to, our president, I would like to say something and about the today the session. Our president, Professor Dr. M.A. Hi, sir, even it is more than 11, sir is from beginning still with us. Sir, please give your valuable opinion regarding today's session.
Thank you, Shana. We had a very elaborate discussion today about the service. There is a very presentable subject to discuss. Everybody tries to discuss it. No problem. I hope Oncology for whom we are organizing these things, they have benefited of this. So thank you all very much for attending, particularly those attended, the participants who attended from outside Bangladesh. If you are pleased from it, happy. Oncology Club always ready to attend our and any education activity. Thank you all very much from my family. And Shana, please close it. Right time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Should I end the session?
Yes.
Next week is our tumor board session. So everybody are requested to attend our next week's session. Next week is tumor board session and Dhaka Medical College Hospital. They will participate in our next week tumor board session. All are requested to participate in our next week's session.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And thanks all the participants. Samit.